Good day. My name is Brian Somewhat. I have recently been retained by Heritage Park to develop a health and safety management system, and you will be seeing me around for the next 2 years. You have been seeing emails from me, I am sure, and therefore I have received questions, and I am developing these videos to assist you in understanding the things I'm asking of you. There are 5 steps to a risk assessment, and the risk assessment is the foundation of everything we do going forward. We actually do risk assessment in our daily lives every day, and there are 5 basic steps that we address. We identify the hazards, we identify who is vulnerable and how they're affected by those hazards, and then we evaluate the risk and we decide what kind of precautions or controls we can put in place to minimize the risk associated to those tasks that we perform or they get involved with. And then we record those findings and implement them. And we review and assess and update them as necessary. So let's break these down into each step. Step 1, identify the hazards. There are static hazards, a stepladder with a hammer on top of it. It's static, it's not moving, but it could fall off if it was struck by or bumped into and fall and hurt someone or damage some asset. Hazardous actions that occur, for example, driving over 15 kilometers per hour in the parking lot on a busy day, especially. That creates a hazardous action. Faulty equipment that's not maintained properly or is being used improperly, therefore it fails and the equipment causes either as asset or personal injury. Environmental impacts or hazards that are identified. These are important, especially in lieu of the fact that we are presently involved now in an environmental gap analysis, and you'll be hearing more about that as we go forward. Step 2, we decide who might be harmed and how. Depending on the hazard, who is at risk and how or what is the potential of the consequence of that occurrence that could affect a person or assets. And then we evaluate the risk, and we evaluate it through a risk matrix, which I will show to you here shortly and explain a little further, which then establishes controls, and we have the hierarchy of the 3 hierarchy of controls, which are engineering, administrative, and PPE in that order. Step 4, we record our findings and we then implement. So if it's not recorded, guess what? Didn't happen. You don't know about it, and you can't fix something you don't know about. Therefore, we need to make sure that it's recorded, and then we implement it, that control, with training and mentoring to ensure that everybody understands and knows how to implement the actual controls we're using. Step 5 is rooted in the PDCA model, which is plan, do, check, act. And this implies that you're constantly doing it. You never stop doing this. Indeed, we have embarked on an endless journey, and our ability to stay on that journey is determined by how well we respond to change. It's important to monitor the assets, therefore. And when we monitor them, we then ensure the controls are relevant. And if they're not, then we need to change the controls we've put in place. And they could be affected by environment, they could be affected by technology or equipment, or personnel and the level of competency they have. So this is what the matrix looks like. It's based in the frequency and likelihood plus the severity. I'll go into this a little bit more detail. So we start with frequency. 3 times per year, that's pretty low, number 1. 3 times per month, that's a little more frequent, therefore a level 2. More times per week, 1 or more times per week, therefore it's fairly high, that gets a level 3. Then we move on to likelihood. Again, lowest will the event will ever occur. It's quite unlikely it will occur. But level 2 is it's likely it could occur at some point, and level 3 is likely to occur immediately or anytime during a given shift or during the day. The severity is related to the PAIR model, which is P for people, E for environment, A for assets, and R for the reputation of your department or heritage park as a whole. And it has 3 levels of severity for each one of these. Then we move on to the priority response actions. We get a risk classification. It's either C being the lowest, B being medium, and A being most severe. Low risk, medium risk, high risk. These are the numbers that come out of the matrix when you put the calculations in that determine what numbers happen, which trigger these various levels. And if it's at a certain low level, the corrective action is minimal. If it's, investigation is minimal and located to the locale of the site, same with corrective action. And as you go into the higher level, into red, you know that these are risks that have to be addressed immediately. And if it's an incident, it requires a much more detailed investigation to control it from never happening again. We now have the formal hazard assessment, an FHA. You'll notice that the FHA is numbered. It's related to a worker position, which is the carpenter, and the activity that that carpenter is performing is operating a telehandler. Okay, so what are the tasks that the machine performs with the operator? Lifting and moving materials with the forks. What are some of the hazards? We have pedestrians, worksite vehicles, overhead lifting, uneven loads, uneven ground, overextension of the boom. What are the potential consequences? Pin, strike, or crush a pedestrian. Collisions with other equipment and vehicles. Load falling on the cab of the telehandler. The machine rolling over, or a spill of toxic loaded material that could be on the forks. Engineering controls, proper fork width, fork back rack installed and functional. The cab reinforcement and roll bars and seat belt are in and functional. Administrative controls, follow manufacturer loading instructions and do not go under loads. Flashing amber light and a beeper on the vehicle, the telehandler, to make sure everyone's aware of it. And everyone wearing high-vis PPE so they're easily identifiable. We've identified that there is a very high frequency, there's a very high likelihood, and the consequences are very high. Therefore, it's a 9. This is unacceptable. So what do we do about it? Okay, now we need to move on to the next. So as was determined in our original risk assessment, the risk was too high. So we're going to revisit our controls. We're going to add an engineering control in having a physical barrier to any pedestrians, thus eliminating them from being in the area. Our administrative controls, we're going to make sure that we have good housekeeping and clearing smooth surfaces. We're going to be stationary when we're lifting loads and not moving. We're going to make sure that we have only performed during daylight hours. And we're going to control vehicle and pedestrian traffic. Therefore, our frequency minimizes to 2, and our likelihood drops to 1. Therefore, and our severity stays at 3, because regardless of what happens, that there still is the worst case scenario. But we're down to a 6 now, which is manageable. Then we can move on. Task. This is a fallout from the critical task inventory. A critical task inventory is basically identifies a worker's position, the name of the critical tasks or activities that that position may perform, which is then associated to a formal hazard assessment number, which was referenced in the last slide. Every formal hazard assessment is given a number, which is associated to a safe operating procedure, which is numbered and associated to that formal hazard assessment and is the guideline for performing that particular task. So we go on now to the RASCI chart. This is the one that I have received the most questions about, and therefore I'll go into a little bit of detail on how to manage and use this tool. So you'll notice across the top positions, which are right off the org chart from each department, and then as well you will see the duties along the left column. So what is a RASCI chart? Well, we have RASCI, and the R stands for responsible. This person is responsible for delivering all the requirements of the duty successfully and executes the actual real work. Then we have A for accountability, the position that has ultimate accountability and holds the authority that the person who is responsible, R, is accountable to. Then we have support. Support is the position that provides support through advice, assessment, review, any kind of tracking trends that you can be aware of so that you can respond to them appropriately. And that support will come from the safety department, in particular where there is situations where the particular department is trying to control the risk associated to hazards. It is my role to come in, and those that in the safety department, to be there to support the various departments with regards to the development of their controls. Not telling them how to do it because they're the experts and should know how to do it, but helping them develop them in a succinct manner that is understandable by everybody and therefore recorded and goes forward to everyone. Then we have C, which is consult. The position that provides input, adds value or any buy-in, assisting in that culture and helping everybody get involved in the ultimate implementation of all of our safety controls. Now, it's important to understand that this can come from internal mentoring or it can become from external, maybe people that you've mentored with in the past who have given you great training and support and you turn to them for support. These are people that you would consult with. Then we have inform. I for inform. And this is basically associated to everybody on the site. And these are the people or groups of individuals who need to be notified and understand everything that's going on. So across the top again, the positions, taken right off the org chart, what those positions are. Then on the left column, we have the duties. And I've put in some examples here: inspections, safety meetings, toolbox meetings, operational supervision, subcontractor screening, weekly safety reporting. These are all duties that people or positions in the org chart along the top in those positions are expected or required to do according to their position. You don't need to worry about giving them a classification on RASCI at this point. All I'm asking is that you list those duties just in very general terms. Don't go into a lot of detail. Make them short and concise. That's it for now. I'm sure you're going to have more questions. I'm available by email or my cell phone. I look forward to working with you all for the rest of this year and the year coming. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to being and speaking with you soon. Bye now.